Believe it or not, even though the islands are the same, they're still different. So even like the way we speak, like a Trinidadian would speak different than a Barbadian, than a Vincentian. So you have that different culture. You have the different foods. Like we may cook similar things, but the food is still different. So I got to experience that, and I was like, well, if the Caribbean is so different, the rest of the world must be different, you know? And I decided that when I grew up, that I wanted to do the same things with my kids that my mom did with me.
Welcome to Travel Love Legacy, a podcast that highlights and celebrates the experiences of Black and Brown families who use travel as a means to create and build a legacy. Hear the stories of Black and Brown parents who are building a nest egg of long-lasting memories, resiliency, and worldly perspectives for their young ones. I'm Melanie, the host and creator, the Trinidadian Canadian mother of a pink-obsessed and awe-inspiring princess. Travel Love Legacy is a collection of stories that serves to inspire those who are yet to take the leap, so together we can leave behind a world filled of Black and Brown global citizens.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Travel Love Legacy. Today I have travel and lifestyle blogger AnnMarie, and we touch on all things budget related, as well as how to nurture young globetrotters in their quest for adventure and international experience. AnnMarie has traveled extensively with her young daughter, and she actually took a year off where they went to countries back to back in what she calls her year of travel. I find that so inspiring, and I know that you will find so many jam-packed tips in this episode. So bring your pen and get your paper ready, and here we have the episode with AnnMarie. Enjoy. So we begin the episode where I asked AnnMarie to tell us about her background, specifically some of her cultural origins and upbringing.
All right, so I was born on a little island, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 40 plus years ago. And I spent most of my early childhood there before migrating to the U.S. to New York City. When I was younger, my mom, she would always take me traveling to the Caribbean islands. So like almost every summer we would either go to Barbados and Lucia, Trinidad, because we had family on those islands. So we would go and visit family. But that's where my love of travel started. And it basically continued from there. But going on, I immigrated to the U.S., got married, joined the military, and had my family. I'm currently divorced, got divorced in 2021. And so my family now just consists of me, the kids, and the dogs.
I then asked AnnMarie what travel looked like while growing up, and to describe her earliest memories with travel.
All right, so as a child, your first experience flying on a plane, back then it was like really small planes. It wasn't like the big jets that we have now. So it was a little scary at first, but once you conquered your fear of flying, it was like super easy. And as I said, like every summer we would go somewhere. And believe it or not, even though the islands are the same, they're still different. So even like the way we speak, like a Trinidadian would speak different than a Barbadian, than a Vincentian. So you have that different culture. You have the different foods. Like we may cook similar things, but the food is still different. So I got to experience that, and I was like, well, if the Caribbean is so different, the rest of the world must be different, And I decided that when I grew up, that I wanted to do the same things with my kids that my mom did with me, even if it was just somewhere close by, like a different state, for example. I wanted to do something different and at least in the summertime, do something different with my own kids as well.
We then moved on to family travel, where I asked AnnMarie at what age did she start traveling with her kids and what that experience has been like.
Well, before I joined the military, I didn't have a lot of money. So traveling with the kids meant that it was possibly just once a year or once every other year when we can save enough to do something. So I think I first started when my son, because all my kids are 4 years apart. So I started when my youngest son, except for Madison, I should say, there's 4 kids. Madison is 8 years apart from the younger son. So when my younger son was about 4, we took our first trip to Disney World. And it was such an experience for everybody. We loved it. And then the following year, I think we went to St. Vincent to visit my family there. And after that, it was like almost not a yearly thing, but an every other year thing, because, traveling with a big family is not cheap. Flights are not cheap. It's possibly cheaper to drive than it is to fly. So you have to save. Saving, even when you save, sometimes emergency come up and you have to dip into that travel fund. So sometimes it can be hard, but I made sure that I tried to do as much as I could with them when they were younger, so they can enjoy travel as much as I do. And now my oldest daughter, she travels every year. She got the travel bug. The boys haven't. Madison does, but the boys couldn't be bothered. They're just happy sitting in the house playing video games all day if they could.
Given her experience writing about family travel, I asked AnnMarie to impart her top tips when it comes to planning family travels that are budget friendly.
Well, when you do travel with a big family, as I said, you do have to budget, especially if you're not making $200,000 a year. But at that time, I was married, so we had 2 incomes, which made it a lot easier than it would be if I was a single mom. One of the things that I did is we traveled not during the busy season. So, for example, if the kids had spring break in New York, I think was about in March or April. And we know everyone has spring break at that time, and the prices go like sky high because the airlines know, hey, everyone wants to travel at that time. So what we would do is we would travel when everyone isn't traveling, because then the prices for tickets go down. We did that. Sometimes we would just drive, because we found out that it's a lot cheaper to drive, especially when you have a big family. Sometimes it's cheaper to just drive where you want to go instead of flying. And then that way we also had our car, so we can use our car instead of having to rent one, and that save on rental prices as well too. But we looked for free things to do when we go to a state. So, for example, I would Google free things. So I'm going to Florida, free things to do in Florida. Or we're going to Atlanta, free things to do in Atlanta. And that helps as well. And that also helps even when I travel overseas with Madison and we do free walk-in tours. We do free museums, and we try to find as much free things as we can. We don't eat at like sit-down restaurants. We try the street foods because it's a lot cheaper. What else do? We take public transportation. So unless it's cheaper than Uber or a taxi, then that's what we do. And that all saves you money.
Now this question, I can tell, had AnnMarie smiling from ear to ear. I asked her what her favorite trip with her daughter has been and why.
I think our trip to Australia in March of 2019. So in 2019, and it's a good thing I did this, in 2019 we decided to make that year our year of travel. So almost every month, Madison and I was in a brand new country. So 2019, our year of travel, we decided that we wanted to do a place that was somewhere that we've never been to on its own continent, and we picked Australia. And I think that has hands down been one of my favorite trips and one of hers as well. I think this was where she decided that, hey, she wants to live in Australia. We visited Sydney, and the seasons are different. So we were experiencing, I think, still winter, spring, and they were experiencing the last of their summer, fall. And she was able to go to the beach. She did the museums as well. She went on a submarine. She did an amusement park, the zoo, and she just loved it. So I would have to say Australia, even now she still talks about Australia. Australia has been hands down one of our favorite trips to date. And I think I also booked a photographer to take photos of us while we were there as well too, which is something I don't usually do because I'm usually the one behind the camera. And this time I was able to be in front of it for at least a day.
When AnnMarie mentioned taking a year off and traveling back to back and calling it her year of travel, I found that so profound and thought that it reminded me of the book by Shonda Rhimes called The Year of Yes. So I asked her how the idea of her year of travel came about.
So 2018, every year we would do a family trip. The entire family would just go on a trip. 2018, we decided to go on a cruise. So we did Norwegian cruise and we did the Western Caribbean. And I decided after we got back, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be 50 in a couple of years. And my bucket list is to visit at least 50 countries before I'm 50. So I decided after we got back from the cruise in the summer, I think we did it the end of May, I'm going to start saving money so I can do at least one country at least every other month or at least once a month. And I decided to do that. And I was like, the next year is just going to be my year to just travel, to do what I want to do. And it was a good thing I did that because 2020, we were on lockdown. We couldn't go anywhere. So it really worked out for me that I decided to do 2019 as my year. We came back. That year I visited Canada. I spent Christmas in Canada with my brother. And while I was there, that's where I found that I was just online, just Googling where to go with Madison that year, and saw really cheap flights for Australia. So that's how Australia came up as well too. And decided, yep, that's where we're going to go. And that's how it all started. Started off in Australia. The following month, I think we visited Norway. And after that, we did Dubai, we did Hawaii. It was like a really great year that year.
I'm always keen as my daughter gets older to find out how parents juggle the demands of school with travel. So I asked AnnMarie about her own experience and to offer any tips for parents who are contemplating traveling during the school year.
Okay, so as I said, I was still married at that time, so it worked out that my husband was still there to take care of the other kids. But I traveled. I didn't do every trip with Madison. She had just started school, and at that time, because she was in such a low grade, there weren't any testing, so it was easy to pull her out. One thing that I do anytime I pull her out of school is I try to make her trips when there are like 4-day weekends. So I try and incorporate that 4-day weekend so she's not missing too much of school. And I always list her school as an educational experience. So I don't just put, oh, we're going on a trip. It's always an educational experience. So that's how I usually do it when it comes to school. But I also, with her school, I also have them send homework packets. So she's also doing work. When we got to know, I think I posted a photo on Instagram of her doing her homework while at the hotel. So she would do some of her homework before we left for that day, or she would do it when we got back from that day of whatever activities we have planned for that day. But that's how I usually do it. I don't just take her out and she just has fun, and nothing else to do, no schoolwork or anything else, unless it's the summer. And even in the summer, she still has to read a book. She always takes a book with her on the plane, so she reads that while we're flying.
We interrupt the story to deliver a very important message. If you're liking what you're hearing and want to learn more, please like, share, subscribe, and leave us a review. Anything you can do to help us out would be greatly appreciated, as your support will go a long way in keeping this podcast alive. Thank you. I then asked AnnMarie, when she looks back at the way her own mother nurtured a desire for travel in her, how has she been able to successfully nurture that same desire in Madison?
Like for me, I tried to do the same with Madison by sharing stories about my own travel adventures, showing pictures of different places around the world. We also watch travel documentaries together. We read books about different places, especially if we're going to go to a place. I would always try to do something where we read a little bit about that place before we visit. And then whenever we can, I try and do like day trips with her. So for example, I would go into Pueblo, which is about an hour away from Colorado Springs where we live, and we would do something there, even if it's just a museum or the zoo or the river walk. And we try and do like weekend getaways when we can, and basically just explore new places together. I've encouraged her to like ask questions and just really be curious about the world around her and try to get a sense of wonder about the world. And I'm just hoping that while she loves travel now, that it's something that she would also like just stick with when she's older, just like how I did it with my mom, did it for me.
Given that she's been traveling with her daughter at such a young age, I asked AnnMarie whether or not she's seen any huge impact in the way that traveling has had on her daughter's development.
For her, it's really about, let's say, the different cultures, the meeting new people, meeting friends. For her, it's helped her really, yes, to learn about the different culture, to try new foods. She has friends. She's really good at making friends. Even if she's just spoken to you for 5 minutes, that's her friend. She's become a lot more open-minded, I've found, more curious about the world around her. I think traveling has also given her confidence to try new things and adapt to new situations. For example, she's always been afraid of heights, but we went to Costa Rica and she tried ziplining above the rainforest, and I think if she wasn't used to flying or wasn't interested in trying new things, that would not have happened. For me, I'm really excited to see her try even more new things, and it's really fun to see how excited she gets about exploring new places and meeting new people. I think traveling has been a great way for her to learn and grow, and it's something I will continue to do with her as long as she wants to do it with me. When they get to a certain age, like we're no longer cool and they don't want to do stuff with us. So while I have her at this age where she just loves to travel with me, I'm going to take advantage of it.
So here comes another gem-laden response. I asked AnnMarie how a parent can start introducing the benefits of travel prior to them having the means to do so.
I started traveling with Madison when she was 2 months old. I didn't have a choice. My dad got sick and I traveled with her. Getting your child accustomed to travel, especially at a young age. And before I go on, first of all, if your child travels under 2, they're free. So why not start when they're young, right? Like I see people travel now for the first time with their kids when they're about 3, 4, or 5, and they cry on the plane because they're not used to it. And maybe it's the first time their parents traveling as well. But it's also more expensive the older they get. So I always say start young. But once your child is used to something, it just becomes like second nature. It's just like adults, you know. Maybe it's the first time you're traveling, but once you get used to it, it just becomes easier and easier. So I always say travel with your kids and travel with them as much as possible if you can afford it. But then all travel is travel. It doesn't mean that you have to travel to a foreign country. You can travel to your neighboring state, take a drive even to the next city, but just travel with your kids.
We continue on chatting about the motivation aspect, and I asked AnnMarie how parents can get started acclimating or simply just opening up their kids' minds to travel, even before setting foot outside of the country.
Read different books. Read books about different countries, different cultures. You know, you can watch travel documentaries or shows. You can explore your own city, your own town like a tourist. You can also teach about different languages, or if you even speak a different language, you can talk about that language, where it originated from. Like people in Puerto Rico, say Mexico, you know, Spanish originated in Spain. You can start talking about Spain. You can even cook different meals of different cultures. So Italians love pasta. You can cook together with your child in the kitchen. So it really doesn't mean that you have to leave your house to experience travel. You can do it in your home by just doing those little things. Watch a documentary on, what is that? On Disney maybe, or even National Geographic. Get a book from your library if you are in a library, and I always recommend everybody to join their local library anyway. But it's really all about that, encouraging the curiosity and imagination of children through like storytelling activities. You basically want to plant that seed of wanderlust. So if you tell your child, oh, you know, the Queen lives in England, maybe your child wants to go to London, you know, start building those seeds. And before you know it, they might be the one telling you, hey, Mom, can we go to England so we can see the Queen? It's really all about that. You don't need to leave your house to really experience travel.
With her many years of experience, I asked AnnMarie to share her top tips of planning a trip with a child.
Always involve your child in the process. You can have them choose the activities they want to do, make a list of stuff and have them say, hey, I would love to do this one. It's not just about you. So when I travel with Madison, it's totally different than when I travel by myself. See, when I travel with Madison, I have to include kid-friendly activities, whereas if I travel by myself, I won't go to a zoo. You know? Also, when you're traveling with kids, you also have to take plenty of breaks. Like your child's not going to want to walk for 10 miles. Because sometimes by the time you leave your hotel, say 10 o'clock in the morning and get back at 6 o'clock in the evening, you've probably walked 10 miles. Your child's not going to want to do that. So always involve your kid in the process. If you want to do 5 things in one day, say 2 things kid-friendly, another 2 for you that your child probably would enjoy, and something else in the middle. In terms of planning a trip, I would say walk with lots of snacks, entertainment that would keep them occupied, and try to find a park or something where your child can just burn off some of that energy as well. When I travel, I always try, Madison still loves going to playgrounds, so I try and see if there's a park close by, but even if there's no playground, she can just run around, you know, burn off some energy. But yeah, that's really it when it comes to making sure that you have a kid-friendly trip.
We then move on to the topic of safety and discrimination. I asked AnnMarie to share her experience on both matters.
I've never experienced any like racism or anything in any country that I've been to. We have those safety guidelines in place, so I always hold Madison's hand when we travel. Even now, sometimes she's never too far from me. Now she doesn't hold my hand, but she's never too far from me. The only time we've ever experienced anything was in Australia. Believe it or not, it wasn't racism either. It was a group of Asian, I'm not sure where they were from, but apparently they've never seen black people. So they came up to Madison and started touching her hair, asking if they could take a photo. But beside that, we've never experienced anything. I basically just travel just as me, just going down to Denver. We do the same things, never had an issue. And a lot of people always say, there's no black people there. How do you feel safe? Believe it or not, as I said, we've never experienced anything. It's always been safe. If you have any doubts, you can always Google, you can join groups on Facebook, travel groups, and you can talk and people will tell you what their experience was like. But it's the same as solo travel. Just be safe, just be aware of your surroundings, and you'll be good.
There are many misconceptions that Black and brown people hold when it comes to family travel. So I asked AnnMarie to talk about what she thinks the biggest ones are.
One of the big things is that we're going to experience racism. And that's really not true. While there might be a few people who have, my experience has been pretty good throughout my years of travel. Another thing is that we, especially as women, that we won't be safe. And that is also another thing that I always say. Once again, travel safety, be aware of your surroundings. If you're going, just like if you're traveling to a city nearby at midnight, you're going to basically try and stay safe. I don't really see a problem in terms of Black and brown people traveling. The biggest thing I would probably say might be getting the money to travel. But if you put aside for a travel fund, you should be fine. I really don't see a problem, and I don't know why more of us don't travel. I think we should. I think we should all just get out there. Get out your city, get out your state, go to another country, see what it's like. I always encourage people to just broaden their horizon, just do what you can.
On her blog, AnnMarie writes that she's a huge proponent of the quote that states, "Travel is the only thing that you buy that makes you rich." So I asked her, what riches have travel brought into her life?
Having money doesn't make you rich. It's really about the experiences that you have throughout your lifetime. So when I travel, I get to see new places. I get to try different food. I get to meet different people around the world. I actually have made friends in a few of those countries, and we still talk to this day. And it makes me happy, excited to see, because I'm always discovering something new, It helps me learn about different cultures, different traditions, which makes me more open-minded as well, more understanding of the world and of people. But the best part is the memories I make along the way. And that's something money could never buy. Whether it's watching a sunset on the beach in Australia, Madison and I got to see this gorgeous sunset, or, laughing with friends that you made. Those are moments that make you feel rich. Those memories, money could never buy those.
And so we close off our conversation by circling back on the topic of budget family travel. I asked AnnMarie to give us some more impactful tips when it comes to making family travel affordable.
Yes, and I always tell people, plan ahead. Always plan ahead. it's always cheaper to plan ahead than to do something at the last minute. And one of the other things that you have to do is to be flexible with your travel dates. So, for example, traveling February 14th is obviously going to be more expensive than traveling February 15th. So, never be unless, for example, you just have to be there at that time. But if you can, try to be flexible with your travel dates. Look for deals on flights and accommodation. There are apps and websites that can help you with that. Consider staying in budget-friendly accommodations. So when I traveled with Madison, when she was younger, I always stayed at 4-star hotels and above. I love that safety. But now she's older, she's 12. I can actually travel and stay at a 3-star hotel, but I always make sure that the area is safe. One of the apps that I always get on is TripAdvisor. I look at the hotels. There's always reviews. People talk about whether or not the area looked good, if it was safe, if the hotel was clean, and I always look at that. I've never stayed at a hostel, but I have a friend who has stayed at a few, and she said that they're not what you think, not like that movie, that they're pretty safe, but I think I'm a little too old for hostels. I would leave that to the younger kids. Another thing, walk with snacks. Always walk with snacks, especially for the plane, on your trips, because snacks can turn out to be expensive, especially on the plane. A bag of chips on the plane is like $3-4, whereas you can buy it at Walmart, buy a whole package of it for the same $3-4. So walk with snacks. Save money when you dine out. One of the things that I do when I travel, and I always do this, when I go to the hotel, I ask whoever's checking me in, where do you eat? I never look at the hotels that they recommend. I say, because they're local, so they know all the cheap spots. So I ask, where do they eat and what do you recommend that I eat? And that has saved money as well. As I mentioned, that we also eat street food. And that saves money compared to sitting down in a hotel. Never, ever eat at the tourist spots, because the prices are ridiculous, because they know that's where the tourists are going to be at. So they're going to raise the price for food. So never, ever do that. Travel during the off-peak season. So summertime, kids are out of school, prices for flights go up, price for hotels go up. If you can travel right before the kids go out of school or right after they go into school, if you take that week off, travel during those times. And use reward points. If you have like one of those reward credit cards, you can also use that, and that would offset your travel costs as well. And really, that's about all the tips that I can give on how you can afford to travel, or how to make travel affordable.
Thanks for listening to Travel Love Legacy. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Doing this really helps me to grow. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Travel Love Legacy. Till next episode, bye.